What's up, fine people? I want to talk about the future of Ghost Recon. I have a more detailed and thorough vision of what Ghost Recon should be than most or any other person has, including Ubisoft employees. One thing that I'm certain of is that there should be attributes. There already are attributes. They're necessary for the code to work. Games are made by using variables and values, and some of those are attributes that determine the performance of soldiers. So the question is not whether there should be attributes. Let it be understood that we are talking about unique attributes for individual soldiers. Now the questions to ask are if the attributes should be unique for friendlies and or enemies, and if they should change over time. I'm here to definitively say there should be unique attributes, they should be dynamic, and there should be upgrades. When I mention that Ghost Recon should have attributes, I always receive the same opposition. People arguing that ghosts already are the best of the best, and tier 1 guys don't improve much. That argument is weak, and I'm gonna dismantle it in a few ways. Let's start with history. The precedent has already been set. Tom Clancy's classic shooters started with attributes. Red Storm Entertainment made Rainbow Six and Rainbow Six 2, both of which had attributes. They also made Ghost Recon, which had attributes. Then Rainbow Six 3 was made by Ubisoft, and it also had attributes. All of those games also had permanent deaths with replacements for dead troopers, unlike the sequels, which remove death. If a game is going to have deaths, which Ghost Recon should, then it makes sense to have attributes so that you can experience real loss. Otherwise, you're simply replacing one generic soldier with a carbon copy, perhaps with a new name and voice actor. The gameplay remains identical. I don't care about the poorly written story or the ridiculous characters, and that separates me from the modern Ghost Recon audience, those who joined at or prefer Ghost Recon Future Soldier or later titles. I care about gameplay. Gameplay is paramount. I want the game to be special and tactical. The modern audience wants a story-driven, shallow, generic game in which they can mindlessly kill time. Anyhow, the classic Tom Clancy shooters had attributes, and they were dynamic. In the Rainbow Six games, troopers could become fatigued and or injured, worsening their stats. In Ghost Recon, soldiers could be injured, and the player could upgrade the soldiers upon successfully completing a mission. Even Breakpoint had injuries, which affected attributes, though it was a pathetic system involving slow-motion animations. You could reload your pistol and watch the slide move in slow motion. Let's get away from that weak system and back to the greatness of the past. As a related point, if Ghost Recon were to have death again, it should also have possession of teammates. Not only is that useful for getting things done in a mission that is going smoothly, but it also is very useful if the character you're using dies. Instead of restarting the mission, you can allow the death and continue the mission as another character. That strengthens the idea of your platoon being vulnerable. Players shouldn't have to restart missions when squad mates are still alive. Also, there should be an inventory system. If your trooper carrying the demo charges dies, you should be able to pick up the charges and finish the mission. If you run out of ammo, you should be able to share your teammates' ammo or pick up enemy weapons and magazines. The second angle of attacking the weak argument is gameplay. Ghost Recon is supposed to have roles. Your platoon is supposed to be vulnerable and realistic. You're not supposed to have super soldiers that can do everything equally as well as everyone else. How do you get roles? You have attributes. However, it shouldn't be as simple as having a few archetypes such as the shotgunners, snipers, drone operators, and whatever else is in Breakpoint. In that system, all of the individuals of this same archetype are identical, belittling identity. In the future, both enemies and friendlies should have attributes that are affected by their role or class, but they should be unique. That's what makes actual characters. You have actual personalities, not some facade of a character feigned by voice lines. The dialogues or monologues are not truly creating characters. Behaviors are what makes a character. The personality created by their attributes dwarfs any voice acting. When you build up a soldier to be what you want, when you get a satisfying roll of the dice and work to shape that soldier into one that fits your playstyle and needs, the soldier means something to you. Losing him has an impact, and it's a genuine impact. You become attached to your platoon mates and you have to work to replace them. All of that would be amplified by enemies having attributes. Rank should have an effect. Roles should have a greater effect. It shouldn't feel as if you're fighting the same enemy pasted all around the map. Imagine you and your 7 unique squad mates set up an ambush on an enemy platoon. You all pick off 2 or 3 of them to start the engagement. The rest all react, and because they have unique attributes, they react differently. Now you can see 6 of them sprint away, 3 of them freeze in fear, 4 of them take immediate cover, 2 of them blindly fire at where they estimate the shots originated. You know you don't have to worry about the 3 enemies that haven't even entered a fight or flight mode. Half of the ones sprinting away were running as far as they could get. It's not as simple as shooting the closest guy or the one with the red hat because he gets an accuracy bonus. The fight feels special. It feels real. You're reacting to their personalities and behaviors. The third angle of refutation is realism. Contrary to the claim, Tier 1 troopers can improve, and they do improve. You can find videos of Tier 1 guys talking about how they became better after reaching Tier 1. It's not as if something magical happens when you hit Tier 1 that makes everyone exactly the same and the best they can be. They can still improve both individually and collectively. Usain Bolt set a world record, proving that he's the best of the best. The next year, he beat that record. He didn't stop improving once he showed that he's the best known in the world. I'm sure there are many other examples of this that can be found, in case you want to make some argument about wind or such. Another thing Tier 1 guys talk about, aside from improving as a trooper and learning to work better as a team, is how a lack of practice makes you worse. You don't lock in at your max level and stay there. Even if they somehow reach their full potential before or as they join Tier 1, they still need to practice to stay up to snuff. They still get injured, causing worse performance. They still get fatigued from doing missions. There's no way of permanently being at 100%, even if you were to reach that level in your Tier 1 career. We're all unique. We all start at different places. We all have different talents. We all have different experiences that build different skills at different speeds. We have varied potential. I will never be able to jump as well as Michael Jordan did. If we both ended up in the same platoon, that's going to remain factual. My best is different from everyone else's. We're all more talented and more skilled at different things. That's pretty much the end of my rebuttal, but I'll have a summary at the end. As for now, I want to talk about the attribute system that should be in future Ghost Recon games. So let's begin. Players should be given a platoon. The members of the platoon should be generated randomly, each having minimum stats and maximum stats that are influenced by their role or class. For Ghosts, the minimum stat for any attribute should be something like 50, whereas other soldiers in the game, friendly or hostile, can be as low as 1. For attributes that are complementing the class, Ghosts should have a higher minimum stat, maybe 70. The range for the maximum stat could be something as high as 85 for unrelated attributes and 100 for those related to the class. As I said, the maximum and minimum stats would be randomly selected from a range. The starting stat is the minimum value, and that will obviously be visible, but I don't think it should show the maximum stats until they're reached. That prevents players from dismissing new arrivals until they get someone with all 100s, and it's more realistic. Fatigue, inactivity, and injuries would allow the stat to go below the minimum until it's recovered. Similar to Ghost Recon 1, Wildlands, and Breakpoint, the stats should be manually purchased instead of automatically assigned. I know there's a realism in having the stats automatically progress in a level-by-doing system. However, that realism would likely be broken by Ubisoft wanting the game to be accessible to casual gamers. Even if that weren't the case, I still think it's best if players were able to decide whether they continue to improve the stat or leave the soldier weaker. I wouldn't want to be able to sprint for 10 minutes straight because I have sprinted a long distance throughout the soldier's life. I would rather stop leveling the stat once the improvement seems unnecessary. It seems like a good idea for the 90th or 95th level of the attribute to be based on the best performance currently known. For instance, a level 90 sprint would have the player sprinting at the speed of Usain Bolt. Going to level 100 would have the player faster than any known human. That allows for the game to be more arcadey for those who prefer that. For others, you simply stop purchasing the upgrades. It would probably be best if you could sell points that you purchased in case you realized that it became too unrealistic for your taste. That's better than allowing him to die so that you can get a replacement to be more realistic. I suppose a level by doing system could allow you to cap attributes and lower stats, however I still prefer the ability to upgrade the attributes that I want instead of grinding the boring stuff. The skill points would be gained by completing campaign missions, training, and doing side missions. Campaign missions are obvious. Those would be what you see in Ghost Recon 1, except you'd be getting something like 10 points instead of 1. Soldiers would be fatigued by going on missions. The training is for the platoon members that you don't take with you. Players could assign whichever soldiers they want who aren't injured to train. That would give them something like 3 points, and they would become slightly fatigued. Those not assigned to training or to missions would not get fatigued, but wouldn't gain any skill points. Side missions would be missions completed by the AI, with objectives such as gathering intel or scouting future areas of operation, giving you information on enemy count and force. The results would be randomly generated based on the difficulty of the mission and the stats of those partaking, changing future briefings and possibly campaign objectives. It could even add more missions to the campaign. If the side mission succeeds, they would get something like 7 points. Side missions would have the potential to trigger 3 events based on Ghost Recon 1 game modes. The first requires the team to exfiltrate past oblivious roaming patrols, similar to the Recon mode. You can simply sneak out of the AO. The second requires the team to exfil past alert enemies, searching for the ghosts as a replacement for the firefight. You could still sneak out, but it would be much harder and you would likely have to fight your way out. The third requires defense of a position until backup arrives, similar to the defend mode. Players could either let the AI handle the mission with random chances of success, injury, and death, or they could complete the missions themselves. If the mission was scouting for an upcoming campaign mission, being spotted could lead to extra enemies and suspicion during the mission, maybe even a different mission because the objective is no longer possible. That could lead to being unable to perform recon, forcing the ghosts to go in blindly. I want to quickly go through the history of attributes in Tom Clancy's classic shooters and then go through some of the attributes I would like to see in future Ghost Recon games. In Rainbow Six, there are 10 attributes. Leadership only matters for the leader, and it multiplies the teamwork and self-control stats of the squad. Teamwork influences the playstyle of the bots, including whether they progress alone or wait for teammates, if they provide cover fire, and how well they use sound tactics to clear rooms. Self-control prevents a mechanism called snapping, which triggers behaviors determined by the aggression stat. Aggression determines behavior under stressful scenarios. Behaviors include freezing, panicking, seeking cover, and shooting recklessly. Stamina is about how many wounds the trooper can receive before becoming a casualty, as well as the fatigue built from the mission. Demolition sets the speed of arming and disarming explosives, as well as how many blasts are required to breach the door with a shotgun. Electronics is your speed of interacting with electrical devices, such as hacking computers and placing bugs, but it also influences lockpicking. Firearms is how quickly the gun steadies and how steady it can be, as well as how quickly bots react to enemies. Grenades determines your speed and accuracy when throwing. Stealth makes you move more quietly. Rainbow Six 2 also has 10 attributes. Leadership multiplies self-control. Self-control determines whether or not the bot snaps. Aggression determines the behavior after snapping. Stamina allows you to survive more shots. Assault determines the effectiveness of weapons while not using a scope. Sniper determines the effectiveness while using a scope. Demolitions is the speed of handling explosives. Electronics increases your speed with electrical devices. Grenades again determines the speed and accuracy of throwing, and stealth determines the loudness of your foot movement. Rainbow Six 3 has assault, demo, electronics, sniper, stealth, self-control, leadership, and observation, which is how quickly bots can identify things of interest. Ghost Recon 1 is much simpler with 4 attributes. For every 3 points in leadership, 1 point is added to every other skill in the squad during a mission. Only the highest leadership counts. Endurance determines how many shots can be absorbed, as well as how much weight can be carried without slowing movement. Weapons determines the effectiveness of handling weapons. Stealth determines the noise of movement. For future titles, Ghost Recon should be more complicated, even more so than Rainbow Six. While this isn't a definitive list, and some of these may be grouped together to reuse the same multiplier, this is my current list for attributes that should be in Ghost Recon. Lock picking. I think picking locks should be a minigame that is made easier by your stat. Demolitions and electronics would essentially be the same as in Rainbow Six. Sneaking would be the same as stealth, but I would have it affect more sounds than only foot movement. Sprinting would determine your sprint speed. While walking and jogging might be realistically different, we've probably all played tailing or guiding missions in video games, and it's not entertaining to move at different speeds. They could synchronize movements to the slowest soldier within 10 meters, but I think having a sprint be the only difference is okay. Stamina would be how long you can move before needing a break. Endurance would be how fatigued you become after activities. Recovery would be how quickly you regain stamina and recover from fatigue. Poise would determine how much of an impact stress has, reducing flinching, squinting, and narrowing of the field of view that's caused by suppressive fire and explosions. Teamwork would work as it does in Rainbow Six, but it would also determine how quickly bots follow your orders. If they have 100 teamwork, they will move to precisely the location you ordered, and they will ignore incoming fire if told to do so. If they have a low stat, they will move to the general area, as they do in Breakpoint, and they might ignore your order if they're under fire. Leadership would multiply the teamwork of all of the subordinates in the squad. Perhaps the squad mate with the highest leadership would determine the speed of order following, regardless of who gives the order. Climbing would be about your speed. Focus would affect what other games call holding your breath, but it wouldn't actually hold your breath. The function would lower your field of view and improve weapon handling. Focus would also determine how bots react to stress, such as seeing an ally or hostage die, hearing an alarm, or hearing distress calls. Strength would set how much weight can be carried and possibly help with weapon swing and recoil. Dexterity would determine speeds for grabbing grenades and using dynamic hammers and other devices. Agility is the speed of turning, pivoting, and vaulting. Jump is the height of jumps. Reaction would set the reaction time of bots. It could potentially add an input delay for players, but that would probably feel bad. Medical would be about treating others, setting the health points that are regained, and reductions to penalties caused by injuries. Healing would be the speed of recovery from injuries, and it would occur between missions. Perception would be the speed and accuracy of positive identification, like Rainbow Six's observation. For players, it could do a subtle highlight of important objects, at least when you're using the focus mechanism. Patience would make the bots wait until they have an accurate shot before shooting, similar to Rainbow Six 2's aggression. Grappling would be the speed of takedowns, although I don't really want takedowns in Ghost Recon. Those would be a good set of attributes for Ghost Recon. As I mentioned before, some of these attributes could be combined, such as making dexterity control the speed of lockpicking. Agility, climbing, sprinting, and jump could also be together. Grappling could be grouped with either dexterity or agility. Actually, everything I just listed could be grouped in one stat. I think you get the point, that these actions should be unique for each soldier. One thing that is also an interesting concept that could work for Ghost Recon is having team cohesion. Whether it be for the fire teams or for the squad, the troopers could gain bonuses for repeatedly working with the same people. There could also be randomly generated incongruity that would give the game, platoon, and troopers more personality. Certain members would clash with each other, causing slight debuffs. Perhaps continual cooperation could break the incongruity and create cohesion, leading to buffs. That's definitely more of an extra system, but it would make the game even deeper and more unique. Similarly, I had an idea for multiplayer. Players who are within 10 meters of another player will gain boosts to their avatar's performance. It encourages teamwork and simulates confidence gained by not being alone. It could also be combined with the aforementioned incongruity, encouraging certain players to stay away from each other. On the other hand, weapon proficiency is something that definitely belongs. When I say platform, I'm talking about firearms with the same or very similar operation, which is to say the manual of arms. The troopers would have a platform selected from a category based on their class. If it's a marksman, the platform would be selected from the categories of DMRs and precision rifles. If it picks the M110, then the trooper would be best with the M110, but he, yes he, because all ghosts should be male, just like in the first game, would also be skilled with the SR-25 and other rifles derived from the AR-10. He would have a boost for all DMRs and precision rifles, but he would also have a boost for rifles based on the AR-10 and also the AR-15, since it's similar to the AR-10. Similarly, if the game had picked the SVD, he would have boosts for AKs with similar manuals of arms. He would also be used to the weight of the chosen firearm, leading to the least swing when using firearms of that weight, overswing when using lighter weapons, and underswing when using heavier weapons. With enough use, players could change their proficiency. Switching proficiency would not change the boosts for the category of weapon. So if you use an MP5 with your marksman until it's the gun with which he's the best, he won't gain a boost to all SMGs, only firearms with similar manuals of arms, as well as getting used to the new weight. Maybe the barrel length could matter for the weight of the weapon that's swung, as a 5-pound weapon with a 16-inch barrel will swing differently than a 5-pound weapon with an 8-inch barrel. The proficiency would affect the following attributes. Sway is the tiny sporadic twitches that affect aim as your avatar tries to hold the weapon steady. It also includes movement caused by your breathing, which is a more predictable and longer movement, mostly vertically but also horizontally. Swing is the movement caused by adjusting your aim. If you aim at a target that is on your right, overswing means that your firearm goes beyond the center of your screen, and underswing stops it short, ending on the left side of the screen. I would make it so that the player has to adjust to where the aim is. It's called free aim, and it's a very fun system. Some games have it, including Insurgency Sandstorm, which only has it when you're not aiming down sights. Graw and Graw 2 on the Xbox also have free aim, but it's only while aiming. I believe they have perfectly centered aim at the initial input, same as in Sandstorm, but the point is that Ghost Recon already used free aim at some point. The precedent exists, and it's an enjoyable thing, and it deserves a return, even if it's only optional, as it is in Ground Branch. Reload is the speed of your reload, recoil is the vertical and horizontal movement when firing. Again, I would not have the game automatically center the gun, force players to do it. Ready is the speed of aiming, swap is the speed of putting the rifle away or taking it out. Aim is going to be the controversial one. I alluded to it in the free aim section. It would determine how centered your gun sights are on your screen. If you have a 100 for aim and you ADS, the gun would be pointed exactly in the center of your screen. However, if you have 50 aim and you ADS, the gun would have a relatively large radius in which it can be pointed, including the precise center of the screen. All of these proficiencies would work on a purchase system. You would gain experience by using firearms, and you could get large bonuses by completing challenges. In conclusion, Unique attributes belong in Ghost Recon for both friendlies and enemies. I believe that players should be upgrading the attributes by purchasing improvements to the stats. In case you skip to the end, I'm not talking about buying the quote skill unquote of night vision goggles or reviving yourself from incapacitation, as is found in Breakpoint. The attributes would be more granular and realistic. They would affect combat effectiveness. Even if you are not able to upgrade your soldiers, they should still have skills that separate them from every other soldier on the battlefield, making them all special and thus more important and memorable. History set the precedent and the blueprint. Attributes belong in Ghost Recon. Roles belong in Ghost Recon. Death belongs in Ghost Recon. With attributes, the gameplay is superior, deeper, and more impactful. By changing gameplay, the soldiers gain more of a personality than what a name and a unique voice line gives them. Aside from a few lines that stood out because of how bafflingly ridiculous they are, I don't remember anything said by the ghosts in Wildlands or Breakpoint. In contrast, I remember Ding Chavez. I remember him because he had great stats. He changed missions for me. Losing him was an event, not a cutscene or scripted gameplay. It wasn't something that I knew was coming in future playthroughs. Tangentially, I think the starting ghosts of the initial platoon should be the same for everyone, with replacements being randomly chosen. That way everyone has the same starting point and it only changes based on performance. I know some people will claim that Ghost Recon shouldn't have this stuff because it isn't sold as an RPG. I wonder how many of them want the RPG elements of Breakpoint or Wildlands. Open worlds are really an RPG thing. They're not realistic for Ghost Recon, but attributes are. Surely most of those people have gladly accepted the series going from a simulation-based tactical shooter into an arcadey action shooter, and they will instead argue against my vision, which revitalizes the core of the IP. Ghost Recon needs attributes. Realism agrees, and it's simply appropriate. Tom Clancy games deserve respect. They're meant to be authentic. We don't need immortal super soldiers with embarrassing banter. We need realism. We need the added tactics of having unique enemies and unique squad mates. We need Ghost Recon to be Ghost Recon again. Here's a bonus. Ubisoft became one word in 2003. That's the last year they published an undeniably tactical and good shooter. Maybe they should separate the words again, or just separate from the Tom Clancy name. That was jocular. Kind of. If you've listened to this whole video, I thank you very much. I mean that. Both of you should be properly appreciated. You care enough about Ghost Recon to listen to my opinions for 30 minutes or however long this video will be, and that says a lot. May God be with you.